All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to pull apart a piece of technology that sits at the absolute heart of one of the most famous and persistent conspiracy theories out there, the Montauk Project. So could a secret government project actually bend time? Well, if you listen to the sources behind this incredible story, the answer wasn't just maybe, it was a definite yes. And it all came down to one single extraordinary device.
And this is it. We're talking about the Delta T antenna, the supposed engine that powered the entire Montauk time machine. So let's really get into how this thing was supposed to work.
Okay, so what exactly was this thing, according to the lore? First things first, let's break down the name itself and what it was supposedly built like.
The name itself is a massive clue. Delta T is short for delta time. Now, in science, that little triangle, delta, means a change in. So right from the get-go, the name tells you its purpose, to literally engineer a change in time.
The design itself was described as this massive octahedron buried deep underground, basically two huge pyramids stuck together at the base. It had three distinct sets of coils that were its active parts. But here's where the story gets really wild. The sources claim this design wasn't even human. It was supposedly a gift from aliens from the Orion constellation.
Now for the core of it all, the really juicy part. How did this bizarre structure supposedly generate time waves? Well, the whole process kicks off with three very specific inputs.
So, you have two pulse signals. These signals make up what's called the baseband. Think of it as the original core information. Those were fed into the X and Y coils. Then you have a third, very different signal, a super powerful stream of white noise that was pumped into the Z coil. This combination of three inputs, that was the secret.
And let's be clear, this wasn't just random static. No. The theory here is that because white noise contains every frequency all at once, it has a 50% correlation with everything in the universe. It was supposedly the universal glue that could sync the entire system up with what the sources call higher dimensions or hyperspace.
This quote really paints a picture of the alleged mechanism, doesn't it? The idea is the baseband signals on the X and Y coils create a sort of template, a thought form. The white noise on the Z coil then grabs that template and spins it violently. This creates a vortex that, according to the story, has no other choice but to literally bend time around itself.
But of course, an antenna this powerful doesn't just work on its own. It was actually the final, and the most crucial part of a much bigger, much more complicated system.
Okay, so check out this workflow. It all started with a psychic, usually a man named Duncan Cameron, sitting in this specially designed chair that could supposedly read his thoughts. A Cray 1 supercomputer would then translate those thoughts into machine instructions, which were fed to the insanely powerful SAGE radar transmitter. And that transmitter powered the whole show, feeding the signals to the Delta T antenna.
Now, the system actually used two antennas at the same time. You had a pretty standard one above ground broadcasting the radio frequency energy. And then deep below, you had the Delta T antenna broadcasting the magnetic baseband field. The psychic in the chair was positioned in a perfect null point right between these two massive energy fields to keep him from getting feedback or interference. Pretty clever, right?
12 megawatts. Just let that sink in for a second. 12 million watts. That's the peak power the SAWS transmitter was reportedly pumping out. An absolutely staggering amount of energy, which they said was necessary to power this whole thing and, punch a hole straight through space-time.
So you've got consciousness, you've got immense power, and you've got this esoteric, maybe even alien technology. What in the world was the result when you put it all together and flipped the switch?
Well, the sources claim it wasn't just a theory. A literal physical portal would actually manifest right in the middle of that underground Delta T antenna. And where did it go? Wherever the psychic in the chair was thinking. He would just visualize a target time, and the portal would open up to it. And the descriptions of these things are just incredibly vivid. They were described as real, tangible tunnels, like looking down a circular corridor with a light at the far end. And apparently, people were sent through them. For stability, they had to anchor the portals to what the sources call the Earth's natural 20-year biorhythms, basically a cycle of energy that peaks every 2 decades.
And this quote right here really gets to the ultimate claim of the whole project. It wasn't just about opening doors to other times. They believed they could manifest solid objects and even whole realities directly from a person's thoughts, broadcast through that transmitter.
So whether you look at this whole thing as bizarre, fringe science, or just a really fascinating thought experiment, The Montauk story, as it's told in these sources, well, it forces you to ask some pretty big questions about the link between mind, matter, and time itself. What really is the boundary between a thought and reality?